joining me, and thank you very much for your presentations as well. I'm sure we all learned a lot from those, and I'd like to open the floor at this time to have a little bit of extra discussion about these presentations. They're all related to esports, but kind of coming at it from multiple different perspectives. So if you have any questions during these presentations, please raise your hands in the audience, and we'll go ahead and get a microphone out to you. Unless you already have a microphone.
Hello. Yeah, there we are. First of all, thanks for the very inspiring presentations. Definitely enjoyed them, all four of them. And I have one question that popped my mind, and that one is faced to Seonghee Park, right? Now, I studied biomedical sciences at the University of Nijmegen in the Netherlands. I got my bachelor degree, so I did follow your story and the results. Mainly about the results, I was curious if those numbers that you showed are like significant. Was there like a test based on significancy? As well as how do we use your research in esports? Like a lot of pages obviously have the words esports in them, but how can we like use it in esports?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, the statistically speaking, you usually use the alpha 0.05 at the level of a significance level, right? But if you try to utilize the R program for the big data analytics, you don't have to focus on the alpha level because it shows the degree of association, not just significant or not significant, okay? So if you have a high level of the number in a result table, it means that, okay, we have this amount of association, not significantly statistically acceptable or not. So that's my one answer for your question. And second one is, that's a great question. Actually, I met a lot of people from the various field in esports related field, like media, like game company, and also academic, researcher and expertise like myself. And they always told me that esports is going up and up in terms of its size and importance. And we need to prepare something for the next generation. And then it means that but the thing is, we don't have any scientific and then objective research, okay, to support my argument, okay. Everybody say that esports is important. How important is it? We don't know it. So that's the one of the good purpose of this research, to support, to make some backup for the policy and also for the investment in the futures.
So in other words, we can actually see how big esports is based on the amount of results that you got during your research.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the wonderful presentations you all gave. It made me feel like I'm back in school again. A lot to learn, obviously. As everything new occurs and comes to our world, and esports is developing pretty fast, maybe even faster than the Bitcoin and the blockchain industry, we do need teachers, but we need them worldwide, everywhere in the world. Where do you think we can find those teachers, how to create them? Because, for example, we have a lot of kids willing to learn, but there is no much places where you can learn, especially in Central Europe or maybe in more other parts of the world. So that's my question.
I would suggest that we start using the retired players or the top players that never made enough money, and you hire them as teachers. I mean, it's similar to what happens with footballers that don't make it to the elite level, and they're expert, and they just need some additional training on how to teach.
Well, that's the additional training that we are seeking to find, so they can actually have a program, a list of, like books and everything, so they can transfer their knowledge.
I think it's more like workshops. I mean, there's certifications that, coaches go through now, and I know the International Federation has started to develop some curriculum on coaching and refereeing, and that would be the first step, I think.
Okay.
I think I'll just share with something that industry people and government here in East Asia has been doing. For example, this is actually a very common problem in here also. Now there's, I think higher education is looking into the sector, but then they're kind of responding slow. But the government and also the industry people are sensing the need for developing curriculum. People are not still finding the best curriculum yet, but there's this very huge interest. So for example, like we have, in China, there's this programmer athlete. He actually now is teaching the best communication university in China. There's also some department or esports department in South Korea. They kind of divide the curriculum into the training of esports player and also the training of coach and also how to form the industry and how to build the esports as an industry. So these are the programs that are developing at the moment, but they are still at a very early stage. Yes.
Maybe just to add to that, if I could, in terms of the development of just teaching generally, or were you asking about teaching players to play? What is it? What kind of pedagogic?
No, not to play. I'm talking about all the other aspects of the esports. You know, like managing clubs and everything else.
So I think that, I mean, already having been here a couple of days, I've met new people that have been in the last 12 months setting up esport academies, some of which are delivered online, and I think that's a good starting point as well. And maybe the IeSF can help us find out where all these pockets of learning are happening around the world, and perhaps even connect up countries to share expertise and create a community of learning that could be quite useful. One of the things I also think is interesting to think about is we heard earlier in one of the presentations about the Athlete Learning Gateway, which the IOC has set up. And you know, one thing to do is actually look at what the IOC has done over the recent years and just copy it, because actually, you know, the pedagogy has been a big part of the Olympic movement since the beginning, set up by an educator, Pierre de Coubertin. So there's some interesting learning there, I think, and trying to emulate aspects of that, I think, is quite useful. The Learning Gateway, in particular, has been set up as a way of helping athletes to think about career opportunities after they've finished competing. So that's, I think, a good model. But also, I would say that the learning can have the values of esport at the heart of it. We live in a time where more people are taking courses online through massive open courses that are available online to study, and fewer are going to universities. So I would say that developing a pedagogic strategy that is embedded with the esport values is a really great way to go. There's a lot here, I think, that could be quite advantageous to the community.
What's interesting about coach education is that esport coaching is so new. One question that I've been asking, you know, every time I interview people and teams is, how are you finding your coaches? What are you looking for in a coach? Because I know some of the teams in the United States have tried to hire former football coaches or former basketball coaches, some of the best, to come in and do the motivation part. Other people have been looking for the skills part. Some other people have been looking at the mental part. So I think it's such a new field that I don't think best practices and the best curriculum has been identified yet. So, but it's something that needs to be created. But I really don't think there's been enough research on what makes a good esport coach, because it's new.
And I want to add one more comment to what this presenter said. Last day we had a kickoff meeting of the building academy network for the esports, okay, driven by the IeSF. So this is the initial meeting. So I cannot say that this is going to be this great in the future, but this is just initial step into the area nobody just step into, right? So we, as a professor and a researcher, still thinking that how to wisely support the current ecosystem from the academic perspective. That's one thing. And I know that your question is not about just teaching, training the athlete, right? It's about the seeing education as a holistic perspective, right? So as a researcher and a professor, yeah, we wanna become a little help or asset to the development of the education system in the futures.
And I know that there are also multiple schools not only set up by some of the people attending this general meeting, but also even specifically here in Korea, there are many schools that are kind of working on kind of what you mentioned, not only just training esports athletes, but also additional education in other areas of esports. I know like Junan Techno University here in South Korea, and then multiple esports academies being set up in either China or elsewhere around the world, not just teaching about specifically esports, but also related industries that it's possible for esports athletes to go into, or just education there. So, additional question?
Just to add on that, since I give workshops already, mainly in the Netherlands, to kids and parents as well as sometimes internationally, I also think it differs on the age of the group you're teaching, because if I teach little kids, it's more like, I think it's better to have an athlete, like a role model in front of them, instead of really a teacher, you know, not really a boss-like figure, but more a role model figure, so the message comes across. But if you are going to teach people at university or on higher schools, you might want to have a teacher with an athlete instead of only the athlete, because a teacher might come, this is going to sound weird, but it might come across more like bossy-like it's really a lesson, you have to learn it. And younger kids is more like the role model kind of function, I guess.
Maybe I could just add one thing as well, because at the University of Salford, we've been trying to build this in the last 6 months, and we had our first tournament a couple of weeks ago, and what we're trying to do is to build a vision for a kind of e-sport environment where you have a number of sort of pedagogic strategies around it. So, for example, we're locating our e-sport arena, if you like, within an existing building within which teaching takes place, but also we have TV studios, we have radio studios, so the elements that operate around the ecosystem of esports, like commentary, can be developed as well. But also we're keen to think about the pipeline, so how you go from player to game developer, but also have R&D around products like that 360 low-friction plate, so that the developers of the technology can also interface with the student player population, but also the academic researchers, so that it goes to the heart of what is an e-sport venue, what is its potential as a community space and as a space for learning. And one aspect of that is, of course, what happens within the tournaments. But with all this high-tech equipment in these buildings, there's so much more that could be done in terms of learning to access those environments, from whether it's students at university or outside of it. I think that's a nice philosophy for sports arenas of the future. We often think about this as a legacy of a sports arena, but actually as a kind of live aspect of its everyday existence, I think is a nice way of thinking about it too.
Thank you very much. I think we had another question, maybe right up here.
Yeah, first, thank you for the great presentations and the work you have done researching the topic of esports, which needs a lot to work on, so thank you for your work on that. And my question is regarding the introduction of esports into universities, right? Actually, it's being done successfully, but in countries that have a story of sports already being integrated into universities, like the UK, like United States, or where esports are already well established, like Korea and China. But I think in other countries or geographies, it might be very, very difficult, as Lisa mentioned before, but it's still very important, right? Because introducing esports into universities, it helps to officialize in a way the discipline as a sport, and also introduces sports in the culture of that country. But what do you offer? How do you approach these universities in Latin America, for example? They don't see much gain in introducing esports in their programs because they don't really see a league they can move their players to, or why support this kind of discipline instead of other disciplines they have. So that's basically my question, because it's something we have struggled with. We have approached various universities trying to get esports program going, and they say, well, but where are these players going, and even to play professionally? And when they are done playing, what are they going to do? We have to invest into creating a program for them, and where's the return on that? So basically, that's my question. How do you approach these universities? What do you offer so they are interested in creating esports programs?
I know we've had discussions before about how maybe military are now looking for e-sport athletes because they have, they can fly drones and they know technology, and some other technology companies like Intel may be looking for people who have played e-sports. So maybe you bring it from the industry perspective on would they like to see an e-sport club or a group on campus, because then they know those people have those skills. It's just another way to think about it.
And one of the most convenient and easiest way to fulfill what you say in campus is that building and then opening the esports only class. I mean, as a selective, not for the major classes. Okay, so there are a lot of students in the university who are involved with the playing the game or knowing more about the esports. I mean, from the industry perspective. Thinking about one of the drama produced by the I don't know the company ABC or maybe NBC, what's that, the name of the drama? Anyway, I heard that the Harvard University they right now opened the class covering the drama. I mean, what's that?
It's strategy. So some strategy classes are now using case studies from gaming.
Yes, yes.
To show how you could be teamwork and then the strategic decisions that are made. So they're gamifying the strategic management classes through eSport.
Yeah, and that's one good example. And then in my university, Hankuk University Foreign Study, my university is one of the globalized universities in South Korea. Not only in South Korea, even Asia. And a lot of just foreign students staying at the university right now. And the first priority they want to know about sports when it comes to electronic sports, definitely esports. But they don't have any class to take to know more about the esports from the industry perspective. That's one thing. So when I met the people from the CASPA and also IES people, I always ask them to support the class, to make a class in a university. That class should be supported by or organized by that CASPA or IeSF, because our university is a foreign study university and globalized university. That would be working very well. And then I got some chance to take a survey about which class, I mean, in related to the in association with the esports, which class I want to take. Definitely, some students say that I want to play directly, I mean, in a classroom. That's one thing. The other thing is I want to know more about the history of esports. And the other thing is I want to know deeper in terms of how to become involved in the esports industry as a job seeking. So those are the good example, and as I said, those should be the funded or organized by the CASPA or other IESF to offer the selective class for students. That's maybe one good way, I think so. Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Just only that in my university in the United Kingdom, I'm sure elsewhere too, but it's really simple. If you've got an academic community, and we do, that thinks that there's merit in the subject, and we do, then it's simply a matter of making a business case for a course, and if we can identify a population of potential students, we'll create it. And it's as simple as that. If we can get around 30 or so students onto an undergraduate, we'll probably start it up. Or if it's 10, 15 students onto a master's, we can start it too. And it's a really simple thing. And that's where the industry is really helpful, because a lot of our courses now want to demonstrate partnership with industry in order to have a pipeline for recruitment. So if you feel that there is that pipeline, there are students that would want to take that course, then it's a really simple process to getting it on the curriculum.
And by the way, the drama is the throne of the Game of the Throne, okay?
Yeah, I also want to share that actually in university, even in the official curriculum, it's hard to get the esports class being sponsored by the university. But then there are actually a lot of student interest in there. So like in the university, there are already some kind of student club or society that actually will be a good way to start with the esports curriculum, working with some kind of enthusiastic student to get the good reputation of the class running. So I thought that's something that can be at work at the moment. Yeah.
27 years ago, when I started the sports management program in the business school, everybody thought I was crazy. I had to fight for it. And now there's 300 universities in the United States that have sports management programs. So it's still young.
All right, one more question over here.
Okay, my question is about the presentation of the research. Yesterday and today, we've been talking and hearing about the AR and VR quite a lot. And if I understand correctly from Seonghee's presentation, AR and VR as a keyword really at the bottom of the list. So I wonder if I'm missing something, or are we misinterpreting the importance or the recognition of the AR and VR because it's not really reflecting what's been researched. So if anyone can answer or react that question.
Okay, Seonghee, thank you for the question. Actually, AR, VR, usually people, whenever people hear about the words, the terminology AR, VR, they naturally think about the content or device. That's the problem. But from my research and project, I found out that AR, VR technology should be installed onto the facility, not just content itself, to minimize gap between the stage here and the spectators sit there. Okay, as I said to Matt from Rossetti before my presentation, there is a strong distinction between the stage here and spectator back there. Okay, this is a big gap, right? And then the beginning of esports, I mean, industries, from the industry perspective, the beginning of esports is definitely from the people, like an X game in the United States, not from the major game company or not from the major broadcasting company. That was begun from the street PC room in South Korea. So the one thing we have to take care of the consumer is to minimize not only just the physical distance between the stage or spectator seat, but also think about how to make some good interaction between the people, I mean, back there, and the player here. So that's one thing that we have to come up with a VR AR, not just about the content or device, how to efficiently just give the content of esports to the consumer. That's the one thing that we may want to use the AR VR, and I hope this makes some sense.
I hope so too, and I think a lot of what's been discussed has also made a lot of sense, so I hope you've all enjoyed that. This takes us to the end of today's portion of the Q&A, so I'd like to ask you to give our panelists a big round of applause.